It's common knowledge that the Titanic sank after hitting an iceberg. That's the tragic fact, right? The one we all learn.
Right. It's the headline.
But for anyone tasked with making decisions in an organization, which, let's be honest, is most of us, the deeper lesson is what happened in the minutes and hours after the impact.
Precisely. The initial problem identification was, you could argue, flawless. The lookout, Frederick Fleet, saw the iceberg.
He did his job.
He did his job. He shouted the warning. But the cascade of decisions that followed, which were all based on an incorrect definition of the problem, that's where the real organizational failure began. It's just a catastrophic failure of managerial intelligence in a crisis.
Our sources lay that moment out so clearly. The leadership on that bridge had to decide, what is the actual problem right now? And if they defined it wrong, if they saw it as, say, the hull is scratched, we need to slow down and make repairs.
Then the solution was fundamentally flawed. It was doomed to fail before they even started pumping out the water.
Because the correct definition, the one they needed to get to with rapid critical analysis, was something else entirely.
It had to be about saving lives, about maintaining the ship's buoyancy, which probably meant stopping dead in the water, maybe even using the iceberg itself for support. The failure wasn't just physical, it was cognitive. They confused the symptom, which was the water coming in, with the existential problem structural failure and a ticking clock.
And that failure, that trap of solving the wrong problem, is exactly what we're diving into today. We are doing a deep dive into the structured framework of business problem solving, or BPS, and managerial decision making.
Yeah.
And the source material we're working from, it's not just a list of tips. It's a full-on curriculum designed to move you from a vague symptom like a corporate headache all the way to a targeted solution and a real action plan.
And our mission for you, the listener, is really laser focused. We want you to walk away from this knowing not just how to fix things, but how to be certain you're fixing the right things.
Because the whole process is this delicate balance, isn't it? It's between cold, hard, rational analysis.
And absolutely vital, can't live without it, creativity.
So let's start with why this is so critical right now. The material really hammers home that strategic management. What we're talking about here, it deals with the big, messy, often ambiguous problems that affect a company's survival.
We're in that VUCA environment, right? Volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. These aren't the routine day-to-day issues.
Right. This is about perceiving and reacting to the unforeseen. A sudden market crash, a new technology that upends your industry.
And if you think about the Titanic, they were built for routine management. Sailing from point A to point B, they were completely unprepared for that VUCA moment when the iceberg hit. Our organizations today, they need to build the mental frameworks to handle those shocks.
Okay, so let's get into the foundations. We have to start with the most basic question. What even is a problem in a business context?
It sounds so simple, but getting this definition right is step one. The source material defines it very specifically. A problem is a factor with a negative effect on the organization.
And it can stem from failures, errors, defects.
Or even long-term challenges that are stopping a company from hitting its strategic goals.
We have to pause there, though, because this is where people get tripped up right away. The sources are clear on distinguishing between three things.
Yes. A problem, which has a negative effect. An opportunity, which has a potential positive effect. And a risk or a threat, which is a future problem that has some uncertainty around it.
And if you mix those up,
you're in trouble. If you frame a potential new market as a problem, your team is going to approach it with fear. If you frame a critical software bug as an opportunity, you might not feel the urgency to fix it. The language matters.
So when we look at management, the sources break problems down into two main buckets, two types of business problem solving.
The first one is BPS1. This is external. It's all about innovation and strategy. BPS1 is about stating a customer's problem, either one they have now or one they don't even know they have yet.
You're looking out at the market and asking, what's the gap? What pain point can we solve?
Exactly. And the White Star Line is the perfect example. Their BPS1 was recognizing that wealthy travelers needed a faster, more comfortable, and frankly, more luxurious way to cross the Atlantic.
The problem they were solving wasn't our ships are sinking. It was travel is tedious and uncomfortable.
Right. And the solution, the value proposition, was the Titanic itself, this giant floating palace that solved their BPS1.
Then there's the second block.
Block 2 is BPS2. This is all internal. It's about an operational difficulty, a project going off the rails, an internal process that's broken. The focus here is on the organization itself.
So efficiency, quality control, things like that.
That's the world of BPS-2. So the moment the Titanic hit the iceberg, the BPS-1 luxury travel became totally irrelevant.
It was instantly replaced by a catastrophic BPS-2.
An internal operational failure of the highest order. The problem was no longer about market share. It was about the ship's structural stability. And if they'd correctly defined that BPS-2, they would have understood the urgency.
Which brings us to another critical distinction: identification versus definition.
Yes. Identification is just knowing a problem exists. It's awareness. It's the lookout sighting the iceberg. It's the alarm bell going off, the red light on the dashboard.
But definition, that's the real work.
That's the intellectual heavy lifting. It's understanding the phenomenon, scoping out the challenge. If the Titanic crew defined the problem as a small hull puncture we can patch, their solution was guaranteed to fail because they completely misunderstood the scope.
They missed that it was about buoyancy across multiple compartments.
And to get that right, you need diverse perspectives. You need the engineers, the navigators, the leaders, all talking and building a complete picture.
So when we think about how organizations approach this, is their posture active or passive?
That's a great way to put it. We distinguish between the active approach and the passive approach.
The active approach sounds like it's about anticipating things, looking for problems before they happen.
Exactly. It's strategic foresight. The Kaizen example from Japanese management is fascinating here. Toyota, who were pioneers in automation, actually started putting teams of human workers back onto fully automated production lines.
Which seems totally counterintuitive. Why pay for people when you have robots?
They did it not because the robots were failing, but because they wanted those human teams to spot potential improvements or hidden issues that the machines would just never see. They were proactively hunting for opportunities to get better. It's problem prevention.
Okay, so that's active. What about passive?
The passive approach is, well, it's what most of us do. You only deal with the problem when it becomes urgent, when it's a crisis.
Like the example in the source material about the Cortijo del Fraile convent in Spain.
A tragic case. This historic site was just allowed to crumble for years. Nobody did anything. By the time they finally intervened, it was incredibly expensive, complicated, and the original integrity was lost. That's a passive failure. The problem was ignored until it became a catastrophe.
So once we decide to act, we have to actually frame the problem. And here we hit another fork in the road: the rational approach versus the emotional approach.
Right. The rational approach is what you read in most textbooks. It's all about objective formulation, assuming you have all the information, and trying to exclude messy human factors like fear or office politics.
The danger there, as the source calls it, is positivist overconfidence.
I love that phrase. It's the belief that if you just gather enough data, the answer will magically appear.
But if you just rely on big data or an AI model without any human context, you might be perfectly solving the wrong problem. You miss the dark areas, the things people are afraid to say, the conflicts that are skewing all your numbers.
And that's why the emotional approach, which is often linked with design thinking, is so important. It deliberately seeks out subjectivity. It uses tools like empathy mapping.
What's that?
It's a way to get inside the user's head. You ask, what do they think and feel? What are they hearing from colleagues that contradicts the official company line? What truly motivates them and what frustrates them? This human element stops you from building a perfect solution to a problem nobody actually has.
Once you have that perspective, you need a way to frame the journey from here to there.
The as-is-to-be technique is incredibly powerful for this. It forces a direct comparison between your reality and your goal.
So you start with the asses. A really honest, detailed look at the current situation, the difficulties, and critically why they exist.
A brutal reality check. And then you define the to-be state, the desired future. What are your measurable objectives? What does success look like? And the gap between those 2 points, that becomes your problem statement.
But sometimes that gap is caused by something much deeper than what you see on the surface.
Absolutely. And that's when you need the industrial strength technique. The 5 whys. Developed by Taiichi Ohno at Toyota.
The idea is to just keep asking why. At least 5 times to get past the symptom.
Exactly. It forces you to move beyond the observable facts to the genuine root cause. Let's walk through the industrial example from the sources. It's perfect.
Okay.
So the initial symptom is, why did the machine stop? First answer. Because it overloaded and blew a fuse.
So the solution is just replace the fuse.
And that's where most people would stop. But it's totally ineffective. So second, why? Why did it overload? Answer, insufficient lubrication.
Okay, so add oil. We're getting closer.
A little. But third, why? Why was there insufficient lubrication? Answer, the pump is worn out.
So Replace the pump.
Still not there.
Yep.
Fourth, why? Why is the pump worn out? Answer, the shaft is worn. Fifth and final, why? Why is the shaft worn? Answer, because a filter is missing, which allowed metal shavings to get in and wear down the components.
Ah, so the root cause has nothing to do with the fuse or the oil.
Nothing at all. If you stop at the first few answers, you're just replacing parts forever. The real problem is a missing filter. The solution is to fix the process that allowed the machine to be assembled without one.
And this works for management problems too, not just machines.
Even more powerfully, let's try it. Why is the accounting review late? Answer, because 2 people on the team are slow.
A bad manager stops there and just yells the staff.
A very bad manager. But we keep going. Why are they slow? Answer, they have little experience. Why are they inexperienced? Answer, they were selected hastily for the project.
Okay, I see where this is going.
Why were they selected hastily? Answer, we don't have recruitment experts. And finally, why do we lack recruitment experts? Answer, because the HR function hasn't been developed to handle specialized selection.
So the root cause isn't too slow people. It's a systemic structural failure in HR.
Exactly. The 5 whys pushes you past blaming individuals to see the system.
So once we have that deep understanding, we need to formalize it in a problem statement.
And the goal here is deceptively simple. It has to be accurate, clear, unambiguous, and this is the big trap. It must avoid proposing a solution too early.
Why is that a trap?
Because the moment you bake a solution into your problem statement, you shut down your team's creativity. You've already decided the answer. The statement should just describe the conflict, free of jargon.
The sources give us a roadmap for this, the 5 W's and 2 H's.
A great checklist. What is the problem? Where is it happening? Who is affected? Why is it a problem? When did it start?
And the 2 H's.
How is it happening? And how much, what's the magnitude, the frequency? You have to quantify it to move it from a feeling to a fact.
The supermarket checkout example pulls this all together really well.
It does. The ideal situation, increased turnover by 25%. The actual situation, bottlenecks because 2 checkouts are badly positioned. The consequences, losing 20 to 25% of that turnover, plus bad customer reviews.
And then the final part of that template, the proposal, it points towards solutions without mandating one.
Exactly. It says, let's explore relocating the checkouts or adding self-service options. It connects the measurable failure, the bottleneck, directly to the strategic goal of increasing turnover. That's a complete, well-defined problem.
Okay, so we've defined the problem. Now the hard part, analyzing it and coming up with solutions. But we can't just charge ahead. We need to be deliberate about which cognitive tools we're using.
You're right. We're immediately forced to balance 2 very different ways of thinking, rational thinking and creative thinking.
And they're almost in opposition, aren't they?
In many ways, yes. Rational thinking is all about reducing error. It's looking for the correct answers through logic and analysis. It relies on what's worked before.
Whereas creative thinking accepts that error is part of the process.
Yes, it seeks the right questions. It's about experimentation, about failing fast. It leverages intuition and imagination, not just expert knowledge.
And going back to the Titanic, the crew applied purely rational thinking to a problem that screamed for a creative leap.
They did. Their expert knowledge failed them because they were in a situation no one had ever been in before. They needed to rethink fundamental assumptions, and their training didn't allow for that.
This internal struggle is something Daniel Kahneman explained with his idea of the 2 systems of thinking. This is the neurological reality we're all dealing with.
System 1 and System 2.
Right. System 1 is our automatic, fast, intuitive brain. It's our gut reaction. It requires almost no effort.
It's what slams on the brakes when a ball rolls into the street. You don't think, you just do.
And System 2 is the opposite. It's effortful, slow, conscious. It's what we use for complex calculations, for focusing our attention, for making deliberate choices.
Here's the scary part, though. System 1 is constantly feeding suggestions to System 2. And because System 2 is lazy, it wants to conserve energy, it often just accepts those suggestions without much of a fight.
And that's where cognitive biases come from.
That's the source. These biases warp our thinking and can lead to really terrible decisions.
So what are some of the big ones we need to watch out for?
The first, and maybe the most common, is the anchor effect. This is when a prior value, even an irrelevant one, distorts our current estimates.
Like in a negotiation, if someone throws out a really high number first, that number just sticks in your head.
It becomes the anchor. Even if you know it's ridiculous, every number that follows is judged relative to that anchor. We see it in real estate all the time. The first valuation, even if it's flawed, frames the entire discussion.
Okay, what's another one?
Frequency expectations. This is where the media and emotional intensity completely hijack our perception of risk. Statistically, you're far more likely to die from a stroke than in a plane crash.
But after a big splashy news story about a crash, people become terrified of flying.
Exactly. Because System 1 has been saturated with these intense emotional images, we confuse how easily we can recall an event with how frequently it actually occurs.
And the third one, in the corporate world, is huge. Base rates or stereotyping.
Oh, this is a killer. It's when we use a compelling stereotype instead of boring statistical reality. The source gives a great example. You hear about a super high-growth, innovative company. What industry do you think of?
Biotech, maybe. Some kind of AI, robotics company.
Right. The exciting, sexy industries. But the statistical base rate, the boring data, says it's much more likely to be an information services or administrative firm. We ignore the probable answer in favor of the more compelling story.
And the last one is the law of small numbers.
Which is just assuming that a tiny sample size represents the whole population. You get the first 10 customer feedback forms, and they're all negative, so you assume the entire product is a failure. System 2 is too lazy to question the small sample, and you make a huge, costly decision based on incomplete data.
So how do we escape these mental traps? We have to consciously switch our thinking style.
We have to move between vertical thinking and lateral thinking.
Vertical thinking is the logical, step-by-step process.
It's the logic machine. It tests existing patterns. It's linear, sequential. If you're building a ladder, vertical thinking makes sure each rung is secure and in the right place.
And lateral thinking.
Lateral thinking is what restructures the pattern. It's divergent. It's not about building the ladder higher. It's about asking if we can use the ladder as a bridge, or if we even need a ladder at all.
So it's about rearranging the information you already have, not just getting more data.
That is the critical point. Sometimes you don't need more information. You need a new way of perceiving the information you have.
Okay, so we have some tools to help structure these different kinds of thinking. The first one is PMI.
Plus, minus. Interesting. It's a fantastic little technique because it forces you to suspend your judgment.
How does it work?
Let's say someone proposes a crazy idea. All company cars should be painted yellow. Your System 1 brain wants to immediately say yes or no. PMI stops you. First, you list only the plus points.
Okay, so they'd be highly visible, easy to standardize for the manufacturer.
Good. Then you list only the minus points.
Boring, maybe a higher theft risk. Everyone would look the same.
Right. And then the most important category. Interesting. These are points that aren't good or bad. They just open up new avenues of thought.
Like, what political support would we need for this? Or could we explore different shades of yellow?
Exactly. The interesting category avoids a head-on fight and creates these little side doors for creativity to sneak through.
And then we have visualization tools like mind maps.
Mind maps are great for activating that radiant creative thinking. They're visual, colorful, and they radiate out from a central idea. They're all about free association.
So they're not very structured.
Not at all, and that's the point. They prioritize breadth of ideas over logical sequence. You use images and colors to spark new connections.
Sometimes you need structure.
And that's when you use a concept map. A concept map is much more logical and sequential. It's for showing the relationships between different ideas.
So you'd use connecting words like causes or leads to.
Precisely. A concept map is better for explaining an existing complex system or a workflow. It appeals more to System 2's need for order, whereas a mind map is pure System 1 and green hat creativity.
All right, we've defined our problem, we've acknowledged our biases, and we have our thinking tools ready. Now it's time for that explosion of creativity, generating alternatives.
The goal here is a wide funnel. You want a huge range of options, from the tried and true to the completely out there.
But the first barrier is always our own assumptions, right? The things we take for granted.
Absolutely. We need techniques to just shatter those assumptions. That's where something like the reversal of assumptions technique comes in.
So you literally list everything you assume to be true about the problem, and then you flip it on its head.
You deliberately reverse it. The James Ready Beer campaign is the perfect case study for this.
What was their assumption?
The core assumption of the entire industry was, to sell cheap beer, you need to spend a ton of money on advertising, usually on expensive billboards.
Okay, a pretty standard assumption, so they reversed it.
They ask, what if advertising does not require high spend? What if it doesn't even directly increase our customer base?
And what did that lead to?
It led to the solution, asking their own customers to share our billboard. They turned their marketing budget into a tool for consumer engagement and loyalty. It reinforced their core value being cheap by linking the ad spend directly to the customer's price. They solved a marketing problem by reversing the industry's most sacred rule.
But we can't just be creative geniuses in a vacuum. There's always the emotional dimension.
You can't ignore it. Every solution, no matter how brilliant, means change, and change always creates resistance and vulnerability. Stakeholder buy-in isn't a nice-to-have, it's the whole game.
The sources identify 4 key psychological styles that we need to be aware of.
Right. First, you have the analytical style. They're motivated by logic, data, and fairness. Then there's the resolute style. They're interested in getting the task done, in clear ownership and efficiency.
Then you have the flexible style.
They're motivated by inventiveness, by adaptability. They're the ones always asking what if and seeing new patterns. And finally, the altruistic style, who are concerned with people's welfare and growth. They're asking, how does this affect the team?
So if you're in a meeting and you propose a radical new solution,
The resolute person is asking for the timeline. The flexible person is asking for 3 more alternatives. And the altruistic person is worried about who might get laid off. If you only speak to the resolute person's concerns, you've lost the other 2 completely.
now for the pure creative spark, the sources say creativity is an intrinsic human capacity.
It involves cognition, emotion, especially curiosity and intelligence. The key human skill here is abstraction, the ability to see a pattern in a bunch of different concrete examples and create a single concept.
And to unlock that, we need an enabling environment.
Yes, the 10 components. A culture of equity, encouragement, appreciation, real attention. It's about actively fighting against those self-protective phrases like, that's not my job, or we already tried that and it failed.
So how do we train that creative muscle?
We use random input techniques. The random words technique is a great one. You just pick a noun at random from a dictionary, say spider.
Okay, spider.
Now, you don't try to directly link a spider to your business problem of, say, selling cars. That's too literal. You abstract its core qualities.
So stealth, patience, web building, traps.
Perfect. Now, those abstract concepts become your springboards. Maybe patience suggests a new long-term, low-cost marketing strategy. Maybe web building suggests creating an ecosystem of linked products and services. You force the connection to break out of your normal thinking patterns.
Then we move to group ideation. And the gold standard is still brainstorming.
It is, but it has to be done right. The 2 core rules are inviolable. Generate as many ideas as you can and absolutely, positively postpone all judgment. That's what creates the contagious associative power.
But brainstorming can be dominated by loud personalities, or just get off to a slow start.
Which is why the nominal group technique, or NGT, is so valuable. It adds structure. It starts with 5 to 10 minutes of silent individual writing. Everyone has to generate a minimum number of ideas on their own.
So the introverts and quieter thinkers get their ideas on the table.
Exactly. Then you go around the room, sharing one idea at a time, putting them up on a wall. No discussion, no evaluation, just clarification. It ensures you get a wide range of ideas before the group starts to converge on 1 or 2.
Another really systematic tool is Scamper.
Scamper's fantastic. It's a mnemonic that uses action verbs to force you to transform an existing product or service. It's like creativity with guardrails.
Let's run through it. S is substitute.
What can we replace? Think shopping carts replacing handheld baskets. C is combine. Can we mix 2 things, like stockings that have vitamin C microcapsules infused in them? A is adapt.
Borrowing an idea from another context, like taking a simple hydro massage pool and adapting it into a luxury jacuzzi.
Then M is modify or expand. Change the scale. Rake Wreck taking a simple hamburger and creating the Big Mac. P is put to other use. Repurposing something. Thick, absorbent toilet paper becoming paper towels. E is eliminate.
What can we remove? Like the transistor eliminating bulky vacuum tubes and enabling miniaturization.
And finally, R is rearrange or reverse. Change the order. The source uses the example of tires nationwide who reverse the model. Instead of you going to the tire shop, they come to your house. It's a systematic way to force innovative thinking.
Now, to manage all these different inputs, the rational, the emotional, the creative, we have the 6 thinking hats.
A brilliant tool from De Bono. It separates thinking into different modes or roles to prevent everyone from trying to do everything at once, which just leads to arguments.
So everyone in the meeting wears the same hat at the same time.
Exactly. When you're wearing the white hat, you can only talk about facts, data, and information, no opinions.
And the red hat is the opposite.
Pure emotion, intuition, gut feelings. The black hat is the vital devil's advocate, all about risks, caution, and negative judgment.
Yellow hat is the optimist, looking for benefits and opportunities. Green hat is pure creativity, generating new ideas.
And maybe the most important is the blue hat. That's the moderator, the person who controls the process, calls for hat changes, and synthesizes everything at the end. It keeps the meeting focused and productive.
So once we have all these creative ideas, we need to shift back to rational analysis to understand the problem's context better.
Right. We can use the Ishikawa diagram, also known as the fishbone diagram. This is a visual way to map out all the potential causes of a single effect or problem.
So the head of the fish is the problem, like low product quality.
And the bones are categories of causes. Often people use the 5 M's: materials, measurements, methods, machines, and labor. And then you break each of those down into more specific second and third level causes. It ensures you don't miss anything.
And what's the cause tree? How's that different?
It's similar, but it's retrospective. It's usually used to analyze a single major event, like an accident. It forces you to distinguish between hard facts, unverified interpretations, and subjective value judgments, and traces the event backward to find how multiple smaller failures combine to create one big one.
And finally, for those external BPS-1 problems, we have PESIT or pestle analysis.
This is critical for understanding the world outside your organization. It analyzes the political, economic, social, and technological factors affecting you.
And the E and L are for environmental and legal.
Right. If you're Starbucks, you have to think about political instability in coffee-growing countries, economic shifts in consumer spending, social trends toward ethical sourcing, technological changes like mobile ordering, environmental laws about waste, and legal issues around labor. All of that defines the landscape in which you have to solve your problem.
Okay, we have survived the flood of ideas and the deep analysis. Now we get to the narrowest point of the funnel.
Yeah.
We actually have to choose a solution. This starts with the evaluation of options.
We need objective criteria here. A great tool is the idea selection matrix, which plots attractiveness versus feasibility.
So you take every idea you generated and place it on a grid.
Exactly. The horizontal axis is attractiveness. How creative is it? How much value does it create for the customer? The vertical axis is feasibility. Do we have the skills? The budget? What are the constraints?
And you're looking for the ideas that land in the top right corner.
High attractiveness, high feasibility. Those are your prime candidates. It helps you avoid the classic trap of falling in love with a brilliant idea that's completely impossible for your organization to actually implement.
So once we have a few potential winners, we have to shift our thinking entirely to risk.
Yes. Decision-making is not about eliminating risk. It's about assessing and taking on reasonable and assumable risks. And to do that, we have to understand the difference between two kinds of logic.
The sources talk about deduction versus induction.
Deduction is pure logic. If A is true and B is true, then C must be true. There's no uncertainty.
But most business decisions aren't like that.
Almost none are. Most rely on induction, which is inferring a conclusion from a set of facts. It's always open to some uncertainty. If we test 10 of our new widgets and they all break, we use induction to infer that the 11th one will probably break too. We don't know it for sure, but we can make a pretty reliable prediction.
So how do we analyze the risk that comes with induction?
There's a clear risk analysis sequence. First, you identify all the risks you can think of. Use your creative tools, reverse assumptions about what could go wrong.
And then what?
Second, you do a qualitative analysis, a simple matrix of probability versus impact. You focus your energy on the high probability, high impact risks.
And third is the really rigorous part, the quantitative analysis.
Right. This is where you calculate the expected value, or EV, which is simply the probability of an event multiplied by its financial impact.
The decision tree is the visual tool for this, right? It maps out the choices and their potential outcomes.
Yes, and the EV calculation is what lets you compare apples to apples, especially when one option is certain and another carries risk. Let's walk through that machine purchase example from the sources.
Okay, so option A is we manufacture the machine ourselves for $160,000. But there's a 30% risk we'll have to spend another $80,000 to get it working right.
Right. And option B is we just buy it for a flat $200,000 and the warranty covers any problems. That cost is certain.
So to find the expected value of manufacturing, we have to factor in the risk.
You take the certain cost, $160,000, and you add the risk cost. The risk cost is 30% of 80,000, which is 24,000.
So the total expected value of manufacturing is 184,000.
Correct. You compare that to the EV of buying it, which is a certain $200,000. So mathematically, manufacturing is the cheaper option on average.
But it's not a sure thing.
And that's where risk tolerance comes in. A risk-averse company might look at that and say, I'll pay the extra 16,000 over to avoid the possibility of that surprise 80,000 bill. A more risk-tolerant company would choose to build, knowing that over many such decisions, they'll come out ahead. The EV calculation makes that trade-off explicit.
But not all decisions are about money. Some are about culture or strategy.
And for that, we need a different kind of tool. Edward de Bono's 6 value metals is a fantastic system for qualitative prioritization.
So instead of dollars and cents, you're evaluating solutions based on core values.
6 of them. Gold is for human values, the impact on people. Silver is for profit and organizational purpose. Steel is for quality and strategic fit. Wood is for the environment and community impact. Glass is for innovation. And brass is for reputation and experience.
And you score each solution on these metals.
From -4 to +4. Then you can visually compare them. If one solution is off the charts for silver profit, but deeply negative for gold, wood, and brass,
You're forced to ask if making a quick buck is worth destroying your reputation and hurting your people.
it forces a strategic conversation, not just a financial one.
And for faster, more tactical choices, there's the pairwise comparison matrix.
Simple and very effective. You just compare 2 ideas at a time, A versus B, and divides 3 points between them based on which you prioritize more. Then you do A versus C, B versus C, and so on. The idea with the highest total score at the end wins.
And what about the simplest method, dot voting? Just giving people stickers to vote on ideas on a wall.
It's fast and democratic, but you have to be careful of what the sources call possibilistic bias.
Which is,
The tendency to vote for an idea just because it already has a lot of votes, it looks like it's winning, so your System 1 brain just jumps on the bandwagon.
how do you counteract that?
You force individual commitment first, make everyone write down their top 3 choices privately before they see the wall with all the votes. That way, you're getting their real opinion, not just herd mentality.
The decision is made. The risk is calculated. The priority is set. And this is the moment where so many smart organizations just fall apart. The execution.
This is what the source material calls failed intelligence.
And it's not about being dumb. It's when highly intelligent people fail to carry out their own well-reasoned decisions.
It stems from a bunch of psychological traps: impulsivity, which is rushing ahead without thinking; procrastination, the classic weak will in the present moment; indecision, the fear of making a mistake; or just plain obstinacy, sticking with an error even when you know it's wrong.
So real managerial intelligence isn't just about finding the right answer. It's about having the intelligent will to see it through.
Yes, the grit to decide and then sustain the effort to put that decision into practice.
The first step is translating that decision into an action plan blueprint.
A structure that takes the idea and turns it into concrete steps. The Nespresso CSR example is a perfect template for this.
So you have to define the purpose like addressing child exploitation, the strategic goals regaining consumer trust, the scope increasing farm audits, and finally, the success criteria.
What does done look like? In this case, maybe 100% of farms are verified. It has to be measurable.
Now, to manage all the work, we use a work breakdown structure, or WBS.
This is a hierarchical breakdown, but the key is that it focuses on deliverables, not tasks.
What's the difference?
A task is the work you do, like code the login module. A deliverable is the output, the thing you hand over, like a functioning login system. The WBS breaks a final project down into all its component deliverables. This is what you use to estimate cost and time.
And the WBS is the map for building your budget.
Right. You break costs down into direct costs like labor and machinery, indirect costs like travel, and critically, a contingency reserve. If you don't budget for things to go wrong, you're planning to fail.
The WBS tells you what needs to get done. To figure out who does it, we need the RACI matrix.
Absolutely indispensable for avoiding conflict. It assigns a role to everyone for every task.
So RACI, what do they stand for?
R is responsible, the person who does the work. A is accountable, the person who owns the result. C is consulted, someone you need to get input from. And I is informed, someone you just need to keep in the loop.
And the golden rule.
Only one A per task. If 3 people are accountable, nobody is. RSEI creates crystal clear ownership.
What if you're in a really uncertain environment where everything is changing?
Then a big, rigid plan is a death sentence. You switch to a flexible action plan using agile methods.
So instead of a huge plan, you have a product stack of small features.
And you work in short cycles or sprints to deliver value incrementally in the form of a minimum viable product or MVP. If the market changes, you haven't wasted a year building the wrong thing. You can pivot quickly.
And during the execution, you need a monitoring committee.
They provide steering and control. They're the ones who watch for early warnings, make sure you're sticking to the scope, and they're the escalation point when the project manager hits a problem they can't solve.
The project manager is really at the center of this, keeping everything moving.
Leading the team, building commitment, and communicating constantly. The sources say communication has to be quick, simple, and use data constructively. Focus on what went wrong in the process, not who to blame.
And controlling is that continuous process of course correcting when things go off track.
Yes, constantly evaluating if the solution is actually working, using metrics, and digging into the root cause if you're not hitting your targets.
And finally, because things will go wrong, you need a contingency plan, a plan B.
It's built on a disciplined, 4-stage risk management process. First, you identify every risk you can imagine.
Second, the qualitative analysis, that probability versus impact matrix to find the really critical ones.
Third is the response plan. You can be preventative, avoid, mitigate, or transfer the risk, or you can be reactive. And a reactive response means you actively accept the risk by creating and resourcing a detailed plan B.
And stage 4 is monitoring.
You're looking for risk triggers, the specific warning signs that tell you a risk is about to become a reality. And you have to keep reviewing that risk register because new risks will emerge. This whole cycle ensures that when the next iceberg hits, you already know exactly which lifeboats you're going to launch. So we've traveled the whole path, from that critical moment of definition on the Titanic's bridge, through the dual-mode thinking of rational and creative tools, to the tough choices of prioritization, and finally, to building a resilient, RACI-defined action plan.
And the key lesson, it seems, is that true managerial intelligence isn't just about being good at the analysis. It's about having that intelligent will, the ability to deliberate, yes, but then to decide and to sustain that effort against all those internal forces like procrastination and indecision that try to pull you off course.
We've seen the absolute necessity of both the rational machine, which is designed to reduce error, and the creative leap, which is designed to find novelty. But here's a final thought for you to take away. If our world is going to be permanently defined by VUCA, by that volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity, which part of this whole decision-making process becomes the most fragile and therefore requires your greatest focus? Is it the rational machinery we build to find the perfect answer? Or is it our creative capacity to ask the impossible question?
Think about that balance and your own mental habits the next time you have to face a big decision.